Welcome to Fellowship Safaris, conversations about people of color and their journeys to subspecialist training in their countries of origin and around the world. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fellowship Safaris podcast. My name is Dr. Jerry Kariajahe. I'm a consultant pediatrician, adolescent medicine specialist, and the host and curator of this podcast. Today, oh my gosh, I'm very excited because I think I have found a Renaissance man. He will tell us a little bit more about him as the story goes on. And then towards the end, you will either agree or disagree with me that this is truly a Renaissance man. I start with a few stats. So I found out that according to the World Bank, in 2016, that there was an estimated 2 orthopedic surgeons per 100,000 of the Kenyan population. This was all the way back in 2016. And that's interesting in the context of things like road traffic accidents and just generally how many people need guys to fix bones and figure out joints, etc. And so when I got the opportunity to interview our next guest, I was like, absolutely, because I am curious about his subspecialty and what his journey has been like. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and your professional qualifications.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for the kind words. I am Njalalle Baraza. My friends call me Njalalle or Jal in the West. And I am an orthopedic surgeon specializing in sports surgery and pediatric orthopedic surgery. And that is that's the beginning.
That's the beginning. So I'll take you a few steps back in terms of generally your practice. What made you think about surgery to begin with as a subspecialty?
My father happens to be a surgeon as well, so there was always that background. I won't call it pressure, but encouragement to pursue a medical field because, as you probably know, most doctors don't think that there's anything in life worth doing outside medicine. So why are you reading literature? Just read medicine, read biology, read chemistry.
Yeah.
So there was always that encouragement. I really liked drama and writing and music. And my parents used to say, or my dad, I should say, more specifically, used to say, you can do all those things when you're a doctor. Don't worry. You just do your medicine and then everything will follow. So there was always that encouragement. And thankfully, I managed to get a place in medical school. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I would actually go the full distance because looking at many of the doctors' lives I knew, it was always extremely long hours, missing parties, birthdays. You can tell what's important to me in life.
Yes, yeah.
Outings. And I thought, even at that very young age, I'm not sure that I want that. Mm. However, the more you know about something, the more interesting it becomes.
Yeah.
And so I always give the example, if someone who doesn't know anatomy looking at a human body is just like, well, you're just another person.
Yeah.
But when you know anatomy, you think, oh, I can see your clavicles there and I can see your nasal bone. Oh, yes. I can see your mandible. Yeah. So the more you know about something, the more interesting it becomes. And so it was with medicine. The more I went into it, I was, I loved the physiology, the anatomy, the dissection in the labs.
Yeah.
Dissection, I should say, in the labs.
Yeah.
And then after finishing, you're almost guaranteed a job. So it's almost like a treadmill.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to take a breath.
Yeah.
And especially coming from the parts of the world that we come from.
Yeah.
It is frowned upon to take, rightly or wrongly, to take a career gap, a breath, because it's seen as, quote unquote, wasting time.
Yes.
So I got into my surgical or junior doctor training. And then moved over into general surgical specialty training, and then orthopedics, and here I am now.
And here you are now. It's interesting that you're describing this sort of balance between art and science, like from really early on. And it's interesting also that you mentioned that, you're almost guaranteed a job. We're in a time right now that unfortunately for a lot of the guys who are doing training, it's not an assurance. Back in the day, I know we sound very old, but back in the day, it was an assurance that we would get work after. How, as you tried to figure out, okay, and you got more excited as you discovered more, why bones?
Yeah, bones doesn't excite many people, I have to say.
Yes, I ask that because in third year I was like, why? In fifth year I was like, really, why? So where did it click for you in terms of the love of bones?
Bones, I completely get it. They appear so inanimate. They're just these desiccated, calcified bits that, often break.
Yes.
And that's all everyone needs to know.
Yeah.
However, when I started shortly after graduating as part of you do 3 or 4 month placements in various hospitals.
Yeah.
And one of the rotations was orthopedics. It's just because it was actually a very fortunate accident. Depending on how you score on the system, you get your first choice job, second choice, third choice. So I got, I think, my third choice jobs. You rank like 50 jobs.
Yeah. And
the rotations we get. So I got my third choice and it included orthopedics. You don't have a choice. You have to do it.
You have to do it.
So I said, okay, let's do it. And it was just nothing like I thought it would be. All the other specialties were it was the same, demanding, all that. Orthopedics was just fast-paced,
Yeah.
Patient comes in, broken bone. When are we doing it? Oh, is there space tonight? No, okay, tomorrow morning, first thing. Get in there, fix the bone. Next day, they're up, they're walking. 2 days later, out you go. Yeah. Next patient in. And I thought, wow, we're making a real difference.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is the mentors and your seniors. You're very much influenced. And I think even, our parents always tell us, be careful who you hang around. That's not a good friend. That's not a good friend. And we, in our naivety of youth, often scoff at them.
Yeah.
But it's so true that you do take on the characteristics of the people you hang around.
Yeah.
And thankfully, there was a very good senior registrar, what you'd call maybe resident at the time.
Yeah.
And he, for some reason, just was fascinated by the fact that I was from Kenya. And he said, oh, wow, Kenya, nice. Do you have hospitals in Kenya? It's like, yeah, we do have hospitals in Kenya. We do have
hospitals. So where were you doing this? Yeah, because I was just, as you were describing, I was just like, this doesn't sound like a Kenyan medical program. So where had you done, I guess, your undergrad?
In the UK, a town called Sheffield in South Yorkshire.
Yes.
Best place in the world.
Okay.
And
known best for
steel.
Yeah.
Sheffield United, which is firmly at the bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah.
And many of the surgical blades, Swan Morton, it's a company that's based in Sheffield. So it's big in the steel industry.
Okay.
And it has beautiful countryside around it. And actually, fun fact, for those physiologically minded, is that the Krebs cycle, developed by Hans Krebs, was actually done at the University of Sheffield.
Really?
There we have it.
Hey, G blades, the Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle was psychological trauma.
It was and still is.
It still is psychological trauma. In fact, people are like, let's reflect on the Krebs cycle so that we can figure out. I'm just like, but why? Okay.
Totally.
So you started in Sheffield.
So I did my undergrad in Sheffield. And then the jobs were all around the South Yorkshire area. So in Sheffield, a town called Barnsley, another called Chesterfield, all within the Sheffield area.
Yeah.
So my orthopedics was in a town called Barnsley. And this mentor was when I met him, it was Barnsley. And he was a very nice guy. And he would come and get me from the ward and say, look, you don't want to be just a ward doctor.
Yeah.
Come, I'm doing this knee procedure.
Yeah.
Come and I'll show you how to do it. And I thought, okay, come. If my senior is saying, let's go, well, let's go to theatre.
Yeah.
He was quite senior, meaning that to him, it was almost routine doing these things.
Right.
He got a lot more excitement teaching me and teasing me about my lack of surgical prowess.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun all around.
Yeah.
So he'd show me how to do things, how to cut, where to cut.
Yeah.
Then we'd reflect afterwards. He's the one who got me into keeping a reflective diary about my practice.
Yeah.
The cases you've seen, keeping a logbook.
Yeah.
How to relate to seniors in such a way that they propel you forward, because it's always a two-way thing. And that was the start. And I thought, wow, this guy's an orthopedic surgeon and he has all these characteristics and qualities. I want to be a little bit like him. And part of that would be becoming an orthopedic surgeon. So shortly after that, when the application form comes, you have to choose which subspecialty you're going to go into, because they changed the system and all that. Before there was something called the lost tribe of junior doctors, where for 5, 6, 7 years you can just rotate as a junior doctor around all these specialties.
For 5, 6, 7 years?
Sometimes 10 years. And
that's a long time.
You do 4 months of cardiothoracics. So you want to do surgery, but you're not sure which subspecialty. So you do 4 or 5 months of cardiothoracics, then you get another job in hepatobiliary surgery, you do 6 months of that, then you move over to orthopedics, then you go to maxillofacial. And so they call them the lost tribe of SHOs, or senior house officers. But they wanted to streamline the system, the education, postgraduate medical education. So they said, nope, from now on you do 2-3 years of foundation year where you're like a house man, and then you move over and you have to choose a specialty then. And in that specialty, you'll do 2 or 3 years of broad training. But then after that, 6 years of specialty training. So you have to make up your mind quickly. So about that time, the forms came and you have to choose. And I thought, well, I can't not choose orthopedics.
What? And this is when? What year is this?
So this is, do you want me to show my age now?
Show your age.
This was 2000.
We have the white hair to show, to show for it.
True.
Yeah.
So this was, I graduated 2005. And then 2 years of the houseman rotatory jobs.
So
I was applying 2007 to early 2007.
And this is when also they were transitioning to a more structured system.
Yes, that's exactly. In fact, we're the first people to go through that more structured system. So we're guinea pigs of sort.
Oh, that's so interesting. So there's so many things you've mentioned that I'm just like, wait, hold up. You had the privilege of having a mentor who not only taught you skills, like in theater, but also just taught you like how to document your process. Do you still have those reflective journals to now?
Absolutely. And they came in handy because it's started being a requirement to keep a reflective journal, and every 6 months you have to have a few entries. So to many of my peers and colleagues, it was such a shock. It was some kind of Fugaza, weird.
What is this?
What are we doing?
I just want to operate.
And so to me, it was just, it was the easiest thing because I was already doing it. And partly because one of my weaknesses, I'm quite forgetful. And there's so many rich experiences that happen to us on a daily basis that because you don't document them and reflect on it, you forget them. An opportunity for learning goes begging, and you're none the richer for it. So yes, I still very much keep those reflective journals. Are
you going to publish them? This is me now just doing an inception thing. Are you going to publish them? Because I think that's really, I say that from the perspective of, here's a guy who's in love with literature and has been pushed towards medicine, and then you're having this sort of combination of your love for literature with your actual skill and practice. So I am guessing, I haven't even read this. Now I'm curious. I'm just like, will you share your journals? But really, I think you should publish them. I'm just saying.
I hear you, Jerry. I hear you. And someday when most of the characters that I've mentioned in those diaries are closer towards the...
their retirement, way past retirement. Yes.
Then they shall see the light of day.
Yeah.
But I also haven't given up on writing completely. I do quite a bit of creative writing as a hobby. I do ghostwriting, so I help other people express their ideas, which is a lot more satisfying because, as you know, doing this podcast, you can only go through a certain number of experiences in your own life.
Yes.
But when you reach into other people's lives and you get experiences from them, you gain so much more. So I'm into ghostwriting and creative writing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still going.
There.
It's still going.
So before I get into the ghostwriting, because I'm just like, now there is another thing I want us to go down that rabbit hole. But how does this Kenyan young man land in the UK to do his undergraduate and then do his orthopedics training?
At the time, being in school in Kenya, it was so much fun. It was just, the 90s for me were just a decade of sunshine.
Yeah.
I don't remember a rainy day. I don't remember depressing moments, a
Yes.
malevolent thought. It was just blue skies, sunshine,
Yes.
trying to leave the house without being spotted.
Ride your bike if you had a bike.
Yeah, ride your bike.
Yeah.
Weekend plans. It
Yes.
was just amazing.
Yeah.
So I really did not want to leave Kenya at all. But the reality was that some of the characters I was hanging around, let's just say their ethos and
Yeah.
my parents' ethos often clashed.
Yeah.
And my parents were of the opinion that perhaps I would be better off joining my elder brother, who was already studying medicine in Sheffield,
Yeah.
going that route. So they had, unbeknownst to me, I was being primed.
For that side.
Yeah, just do chemistry at
Yeah.
A levels. Oh yeah, just get A's and we'll allow you to go out of the weekend.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
do this, do that.
Let me tell you, parents, for the record, parents are masterminds at this inception thing of, let's channel it in this direction. And so that's how you ended up now transitioning?
So that's handed up, and so they said, it's time you start thinking about your future. You're not
Yeah.
a child anymore.
Yeah.
If you look at the people you hang out here, look at where there's opportunities. Look at your brother, who was always such a great example. He was one of those students who was, follows the rules,
Yeah.
does well in school. I was a little bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, whenever you're losing focus, just look at your big brother.
And then focus like your big brother.
Just do what he does and you'll be fine. So the path was there for me.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I got a bit of a scholarship, which really helped in terms of the fees,
that's good,
which
yeah.
is nice. And
Yeah.
the thing about what I'm realizing now in my old age
Yeah.
is that there's always very many opportunities if you search for them.
Yeah.
But as an 18, 19-year-old, you're not searching for opportunities to study. You're doing the opposite. You're looking for opportunities to have fun, to do this, freedom.
Yes.
So that's again where mentorship comes in. If and you don't listen to your parents because what do they know?
Yeah.
So if people have mentors,
Yeah.
people who are slightly older than them, who they look up to, who doing something with their lives, to tell them, yep, it's okay to have fun,
Yeah.
and try and go out every weekend,
Yeah.
but you still have enough time to look at this scholarship, look at this opportunity, try and do this. And especially now where there's so much wealth in the world,
Yeah.
and people are trying to bring up the quote-unquote low-middle income countries.
Right.
If we seek out those opportunities, they are there, but it's just trying to motivate the young people to seek them. So.
Yeah. So we're hoping that these kinds of conversations will get them to that point of, hey, I want to connect with someone like Njalalle who can be able to show me on the right path. And it's so interesting that you keep mentioning mentorship, which sounds like it was such a root part of who you are now. So apart from the orthopedic registrar, resident, who sort of mentored you in that pathway, are there a couple of other people who mentored you along, orthopedic surgery and maybe into the subspecialties you selected?
Absolutely. Probably too many to mention because...
Maybe the top 2, 3. I think you can mention their names.
Yeah, the podium people.
Yes.
I've already... Okay, outside family, because
Yeah.
as I mentioned, my big brother was always... he's not an orthopedic surgeon. He's more a general colorectal surgeon. But just the example he set in terms of dedication to his work and application, that was always great. My dad was always there to, look up to. He's in the field as well, even though it's not orthopedics. In terms of orthopedics, actually there was a bit of a gap because once I got into it, I had to move town. So I had to move away from Sheffield to the West Midlands, Birmingham, the UK.
Yeah.
And there it was totally different experience because you don't know the town, you don't know anyone.
Yeah.
It's deep loneliness.
Yes.
It is trying to find your feet again after you thought you're settled in life.
Yeah.
The rug has been swept from under your feet. And you start questioning many life choices.
Yeah.
Thankfully, within the first 2-3 years,
Yeah.
there were some really good surgeons I met and people. There was an educationalist, actually, I met on a plane on the way to Kenya,
Yes.
who lived in Birmingham, and we hit it off. We got chatting. He invited me to his place. He lived, 5-minute drive from where I lived.
Yeah.
And he was really good in terms of making me believe that what I was doing was important and worthy.
Wow.
Because when you're too deeply immersed, again, part of this narrow medic vision,
Yes.
everyone you hang around is a doctor, and you see that they're doing the same thing as you're doing.
Yes, and everyone is amazing and really brilliant.
Everyone is bright.
Yeah.
Everyone is, they work so hard. They
Yeah.
don't complain. They're getting research papers out.
Yes.
They're doing stuff for charity. And you think, wow, I mean, how am I different? How am I? So it's
Yeah.
very good to stray outside your field and meet people who are not in medicine to remind you, oh my goodness me, what did you do? That's so nice. That's so amazing. So he was I don't even think he knows it.
Yeah.
He was a very good encouragement for me.
And this is a stranger. This is someone you met on your flight
On
back.
my flights, we exchanged numbers and we'd
Yes.
meet once every 2-3 months,
Oh,
have a meal, have
Yeah.
a drink, chat about it. And he would just love hearing about all the things I was doing.
Wow.
So that was really good
Yeah.
in terms of preventing me from getting jaded because, it's a slog. It's a slog a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then while doing the operation, there were some really inspirational, supremely talented surgeons.
Yeah.
You watch their hands move and you think, oh my goodness, if I could have half the amount
skill.
of ability
Yeah.
that they have, I'll be good.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this particular one is that he was, again, quite senior, very secure in himself, good enough to allow you to try and do what he was doing, rectify your mistakes. And I don't think everyone has those opportunities to meet people who want the best for you and are able to give you a chance and correct you, tell you off in a very compassionate way, nothing personal, and guide you towards where, the best of your abilities or potential.
Yeah.
So I had one of those as well.
Yeah.
And then academically, there were a few people, but the thing about academics, I didn't really go. You have to get about a publication a year during training.
Yeah.
So in the end, you look like a pseudo-academic in terms of your output.
A publication a year.
At the minimum. And because I was a bit of a rebel, sometimes they demanded 2.
I was like, wow. I'm sure the researchers who listen to this are like, yeah, that's amazing.
No, they think that's not anything.
I know there's some academics who are like, yes, absolutely, it should be that way.
Yes,
so you managed to do that as well?
I didn't have a choice, Jerry. I did not have a choice. You have to churn stuff out.
So when we Google you, how many papers do you have out now?
I stopped counting. Now that I don't have to do them anymore.
Look at this guy. So how many? We can Google and we'll find them.
Yes, you can.
Oh my gosh. So roughly how many now?
Oh, God, maybe about a dozen.
Wow.
Maybe a bit more.
Wow. So, big ups to the program because at least you have that sort of like background in terms of these are the things that I've done academically.
And that's exactly what we had these annual, call them RETAs, Review of In-Training Assessment or Annual Review of Competency Training. Mm-hmm. And that was the ethos the director was trying to tell us, saying, look, you sat there, Baraza, saying you're so good at doing, knee replacements and hip replacements and all this trauma surgery.
Yeah.
But so is everyone else. All your peers, in fact, the ones who are more senior to you, are better than you at doing it.
Yeah.
And so is every other orthopedic surgeon in the country. What distinguishes you when you're going for job applications, what will make you stand out is your academic bit. No one stands and watches you do
whatever surgery.
A femoral nail or a carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
All they have is your CV. And if you have one publication after 6 years and somebody else has 10 publications, then guess who's going to be shortlisted for whatever job, for whatever. And at the time, of course, you're resistant to it. You're too down in the muck and the dirt to lift up and see the horizon.
Right.
But looking back, in fact, I need to send them an email.
And say, thank you.
Thank you and sorry.
Thank you and sorry is in summary of this whole communication thread.
Because you finish and you look at your CV and you think, wow, I'm actually competitive. And not just in the UK or in Kenya, but anywhere in the world. I could go anywhere in the world, present the CV, and I will be in with a chance for whatever post you have.
Wow.
And that gives you some kind of mental liberation, which to me is the most precious thing.
Yeah.
Just not feeling like you don't have options is so disempowering. You might not always exercise the options, but just mentally knowing you have them, to me, is the most valuable thing ever.
Ever. That mental liberation. In fact, you said it and I'm just like, yeah. Because thinking back even for me and all the things that I've done up until this point, every time I'd apply myself to do something else, it was, I need to just get to a point where I have more choice. Not because you're going to pick on every single choice, but the fact that they are there now. So that's just an amazing thing. Mental liberation. It's going to stick with me. From the orthopedic surgery that you had done, how did you then select on a particular subspecialty? And was that still in the UK, or did you transition to somewhere else?
So during the orthopedic training, you rotate through all the subspecialties for a few months as part of the training.
Yeah.
And then when you're approaching the final exam, the FRCS, in fact, maybe a year before, because of the job market, when you look at all the jobs listed in the UK, and I think the world is moving towards this, it says we'd like a consultant who does foot and ankle and trauma. We want a consultant who does shoulder surgery. We want a consultant who... It's never a general orthopedic surgery because the volumes are high.
Yeah.
And, there is a need for a certain service. So why not get a specialist in that service rather than a generalist who doesn't, who knows a little bit about it but does everything.
Yeah.
So those days are, I think, coming to an end. And for better or for worse, because in some areas you do need a generalist.
Yeah.
But in most cities now, you'll go somewhere, you'll say, I want someone who does this subspecialty.
Yeah.
So you knew it was always going to be, you always need to pick a subspecialty.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my shoulder, the consultant I told you who had really incredible hands, he did knees and shoulders.
Okay.
And he was letting me do a lot of stuff. And then when I went back to the mother hospital, there was always a fellow there, a pesky fellow, who was taking opportunities that were mine.
Yes. Yeah.
So I never quite felt I was as good with the shoulder and knee, especially arthroscopic surgery, which is not intuitive. Open surgery is intuitive. Once you've done a few, you can do it all. It's very transferable. But arthroscopic surgery or sports surgery is a completely different skill because it requires steadiness of one hand, moving the other hand.
Yeah.
If you move too much, you get seasick, your dimensions go wrong, you don't know where you're going. So it requires you need hundreds of scopes. And so towards the end, that was the one part of my training, with the trauma surgery, hip knee replacement, I was like all okay with that. But with arthroscopy, I just wasn't comfortable in myself. Yeah. So I started seeking out fellowships in that. I thought, that's what I want to do for fellowship to make myself good at this.
So you picked the thing that you're not good at
that I was weakest in.
You're like, this is the thing I need to just sharpen my skill in.
I knew that I would like it because all through, whenever you delve deep into something, you eventually like it. And no matter what it is like, if you're like me, sometimes you get caught up in these Google and YouTube rabbit holes in the middle of the night when you can't sleep. And you'll say, this scientist, and you look him up and you're like, he discovered the Bohr effect. What's that? Oh my gosh, molecules. And then 6 hours later, you're like, this is so fascinating. I can't believe I didn't know this.
Yes.
So
about this person.
Yeah, about this person. Yeah. So I'm always, I love knowledge.
Yeah.
I started doing courses in arthroscopy. There's always, every 6 months, there was a course somewhere. So sharpen my skills. Yeah. Ask other people ahead of me, what did you do? You know, I don't like inundating people with details of my life, but you just mentioned that you may have a passing interest and you make connections, and that's how it grew. I got hold of somebody who did a very good fellowship in an area which I'd wanted to explore, and got talking to him. He introduced me to the fellowship director. I was told to submit your application, and things just snowballed from there.
But then it was very intentional snowball sort of things, because it sounds like you are actively seeking out these opportunities and leveraging in on your social capital, like, hey, tell me about this, or introduce me to this person. And how long was the arthroscopic fellowship? How long in terms of training?
Yeah, so the first thing is that I think you can't always direct the minutiae in your life. Yeah. Like, 2:00 on Saturday, I'm going to be here. Yes. But I think it's incumbent on all of us to have an idea of the general direction. Yeah. This is where I want to be by this time. Yes. And then the details will almost sort themselves out. Yeah. So I knew, I want to do shoulder and knee arthroscopic surgery. Yeah. And I don't want to do it in the UK. One of my old bosses said, going away for fellowship is the this might get me into trouble, is the opposite of incest. You don't.
What?
I know, his words, not mine.
That is my laugh. I was not expecting that to come out of your mouth.
He said when you're in the same institution,
Yeah.
learning with the same surgeons and
Yeah.
the same culture, you'll pick up the same bad habits, and you will not even see it because you're down there.
That medical culture.
Yeah,
right.
it's all there. You need to leave. You need to go somewhere else. You need to just escape.
Yeah.
And then you get the perspective, you get the ability to regard yourself the way others see you, not just the way you think you are. So it was very much encouraged that you leave, go out of the country.
Yeah.
Or at least out of the unit.
Yeah.
So I was looking for those opportunities. And then I met somebody at a conference who had done that surgery, and he was actually teaching on the conference, said, you have to talk to those guys. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the west coast of North America is a beautiful place. And he showed me some photos. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
This is
that part
incredible.
of it's beautiful.
All the way from Alaska down the Yukon, BC, and Oregon, Portland, California, down to California, Baja, Mexico. Oh, it is.
You are like, it was the pictures that sold you. Njalalle, just be honest, it's the pictures that sold you.
They helped.
Significantly.
The pictures helped. And he said they're very nice. They taught me all these things I know. And he was a very calm, competent guy. He knew a lot. He had good skills. I thought, okay, this would be something worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And then I met somebody else who had done the fellowship who corroborated what he had said. And I said, let's do it. So I sent my CV off.
Yeah.
Thankfully, by some twist of fate, I got a shortlisting.
Yeah.
I went to visit the unit because I wanted to see, what the town is like. I don't always get, as you may have realized, I don't just focus on the medical aspect. I wanted to discover, right, is this a place I can keep healthy, both physically and mentally? A place where I can grow, a place where I can do new things, because it's a big planet.
Outside of the hospital.
Absolutely. There's so many opportunities and challenges to be overcome outside medicine. I feel restricting myself to that is like only tasting one variety of fruit.
Yes, throughout
your life.
Every day. It's the same melon.
I know.
It's sweet, but after a while you're like...
and sometimes you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
I always give the example, somebody who's eaten, say, ugali and sukuma wiki all his life.
Yeah.
And he's 95 years old.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you, well, what are you telling me about other foods? Look, I'm 95. I've made it in life. I've had a long life, and
I've been sustained by
this ugali and sukuma wiki. But in a way, you can't explain it. You look, you smile, but inwards you feel a deep sadness for him because you've not experienced nyama choma and sushi and
all these other
and pasta with pesto.
Yes.
So you want as many experiences as you can get. So I went to the units to see what they do.
Was it like an observership that you went to do, or just
it was literally jumped on a plane for 3-4 days to go see the guy. Shook his hand. I said, "Yep, I'm the guy who you shortlisted for this thing.
I've come to check you out.
Just see whether you can actually operate, whether you can teach me something."
You were shortlisting me, but I've come to check you out.
Yeah.
I love that.
You've determined that I'm good enough for you, but are you
good enough for me? Oh.
And so spent a couple of days with the surgeons, and then I spent a couple of days just touring the wider, lower mainland area of the city and checking out the Pacific and the bit of the nightlife and all that. And it was just incredible. I knew, this is a place I'd love to be.
Yeah.
And I think that energy showed through, and he, selected me as one of the 3 fellows that year.
Wow. So out of how many? How many people had applied? Did you find out later?
Yeah, I did, because I used to help him. When I was there, I was helping him with the applications.
For other people. So it was out of how many?
They receive about 300 to 400 applications every year. They shortlist about 75. And then those are the people who they go into detail with and check. And then they pick 3. Some, they say, look, you didn't make this round, but if you want to, you're very good. We can put you into next year if you're willing to wait. Yeah. But some people have job pressure or family issues, so they say, no, I can't wait. Sorry, if it's not this year,
it's not going to work for me. So 3 out of 300 in your time, roughly?
Roughly.
Wow. I think when we're doing these applications, I think for a lot of people, they don't realize, you do realize how many other people, but you never quite imagine there'd be 300 or 400 people in the world applying for this one position that, you're also applying for.
Yeah, but there's so many benefits you have. So first of all, you're Kenyan. There are not many Kenyan people applying. And then your CV is up to a certain standard. You've proved that you can operate. You can express yourself well.
Yeah.
You do things outside medicine. And that puts you at a fairly elevated position in terms of the shortlisting. If anything, people are just interested. Like, who is this Kenyan person with a funny name?
Yes, that I cannot pronounce. I know, guys would look at my name and go like, 10 letters.
I know. It can be, sometimes it sets you back, but many times it generates interest. And that's all you need sometimes, a foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, you express yourself, you sell yourself, your dreams can come true.
Wow. I love that because, again, there's so many people trying to figure out what am I going to do? Why would they choose me and not somebody else? But I really love how you've framed it for a lot of people. And I hope people are encouraged as they're putting out their applications. But one of the other things that you've also described is when you were going from Sheffield into the other town. Birmingham now. You had this rug pulled from under you. But now you are willingly having the rug pulled from under you again as you go from the UK into Canada.
Yes.
How is that for you?
It was actually refreshing. It was actually refreshing because having been in the UK for so long, done med school there, I was so familiar with the system, the hospitals, the training, and I associated it with work. I don't know whether you've ever associated a place or a thing with grind.
Yes.
With effort, with reading, with exams.
Absolutely. To the point where there are certain songs I can't put as my ringtone because they're so triggering for internship or whatever in terms of work. Yeah.
So the UK had become that for me. It was just work.
Yeah.
And I was ready for a new challenge. Of course, I was much older, more mature. You realize that you don't need all your friends around you to survive. You can make it on your own. You've done it once. You can do it again.
Yeah.
And you're also realizing that time is passing. Yeah. And there are certain life experiences you need to have. You won't always have non-arthritic knees and the ability to fly 10,000 miles.
And not have your knees paining at the end of the flight.
Yeah, waiting at airports, all that. It's all those things begin to, once you get a bit older, bear down on you. So I knew at the time I was young enough to do all that, seize the opportunity, go to a beautiful part of the world. And I thought, this is great. I actually embrace it with both hands.
Yeah.
And I think I'd primed myself for goodness. I told myself, you know what, even before I went for the 3-day, 4-day observership thing, I told myself, I'm going to love this because it's different. I've decided I'm going to like it.
Yeah.
And it came true. And when I actually went for the fellowship, I decided, I'm going to love this place. I was so excited as the plane was landing, looking at the mountains and the Pacific as the plane swooped down. I was just buzzing with excitement. And as I got to the new place, which had views of the sea and the North Shore Mountains, it was like heaven. And I'd pre-primed myself for niceness, and so it was just lots and lots of goodness. And so it was a fantastic year. It was an absolutely stellar year
for you in terms of your training. And now you were going to do the arthroscopic.
Yes, that was
fellowship.
The first fellowship. Yes.
That was the first fellowship.
Yes.
And how was the learning environment for you? Because now you're transitioning from a UK system, UK medical system, to now the Canadian system. So what was that transition for you?
It was a little bit. It took some adjusting. The names of drugs, the way they prescribe, the
lingo,
way the juniors, the lingo, the accents, the way the juniors relate to the seniors. It took probably a couple of months to get conversant with it. But the good thing is that as long as you're humble, willing to learn, people are always willing to hold your hand. I think, I'm going to sound very naive here again, most people are fundamentally good. And if they sense good energy and goodwill, then they want to jump on the bandwagon as well. So you say, hi, I'm not sure how to do this. Is there any chance you can help me? How long have you worked here? I've been here 10 years. I'll show you. This is easy. You do this is this. I don't know how to do, but you can ask this guy who is nice. And you just create a little community. And so a bit of adjustment, but it was all part of I was ready for the challenge. I was ready to learn. So...
Oh, okay. That's amazing, because especially having a new medical system, you're sort of like having to relearn a language, or go from writing from your right with your right hand and going sort of with your left hand.
True.
And it's interesting because that's the one thing I don't find people being prepared for when they go, and the reality of it's going to take you like 3 to 6 months to figure out the system and being patient with yourself in that way. And so you get through the arthroscopic fellowship. What were some of the highs of that training?
So in addition to the clinical work, there was a lot of... The good thing about fellowship is that it's focused.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do arthroscopy. So there's lots of knee, shoulder, hip, elbow scopes, a little bit of trauma here and there.
Yeah.
So you get really good, really proficient, really confident in your skills in performing these procedures, which is fantastic. That's what you went there for.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, new hobbies, learned how to ski, which is it's addictive.
Oh, yeah?
Expensive, but so worth it.
Yeah.
It's wiped me dry. And as a fellow, you don't earn that much.
Right.
So
that's what I was going to tell you. As
so
a fellow, you don't earn a lot of money.
I know, but skiing almost liberated me because before I was like, oh my gosh, I'd saved all this money in the UK, I'm spending it because and the town I was in is extremely expensive. So pretty much all my salary was going to rent. Yeah. And then the living expenses were coming out
now?
In Vancouver.
In Vancouver, okay.
And then all my savings was now going into recreational activities.
Yeah.
So it's just dwindling. You think, oh my gosh, I've been working like 10 years.
And now
11
it's
years,
just...
And all my savings is going to nothing. And I'm in my mid-30s.
Yeah.
And life is horrible.
Yeah.
And then I discovered skiing. And I thought, you know what? It's worth it. And I just let go.
Yeah.
And it wiped me dry.
Yeah.
I would do it again tomorrow, Jerry. I would do it again tomorrow. I would go back on the ski slopes.
Oh my
It's the views you get, the clarity of the air, the moving down, the carving in the snow.
Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. So that was one of the highlights, going skiing.
Yeah.
And then just, again, meeting people from around the world. So there's fellows from lots of Australians, New Zealanders, local Canadians, British guys. And you all form a little community because no one knows anyone in the town.
Yeah.
So you all hang out together, you do things. And it was the camaraderie was really good.
It was really good. Yeah. There are a lot of really good people who I know who come from BC actually, who are just, let me not do the thing where you're like, oh, you come from this part. Okay, I know someone from this part. But there's some really solid people from that part of the world. So up until this point, you've done all these publications, you've worked in the UK, you've gone into Canada, you've done a fellowship there. Why come back to Kenya? Because that's the first question people usually ask. Why did you come back?
Good question.
Yeah, because most guys are like, you have it.
Yes.
The big...
The path.
The big Maju dream, as they call it. The big Maju dream. What made you come back?
Yeah, I ask myself that every time I plant my Toyota in a pothole. No, it is... I think human beings are fundamentally driven.
Yeah.
We all think we're driven by money and resources. Yeah. But I think we're driven by ambition. That's what drives us. Ambition and the need to make a difference. Yeah. So staying out in the West, though an option, already I'd been there. So, of course, that whole novelty thing was gone. I mean, you know what it is. You know what it's like. Yeah. You know what it's like being a minority out there, the highs, the lows. Yeah. And then back home in Kenya, there's lots of friends, lots of family, lots of new experience. But more importantly, to medicine, lots of need. There's need for, you mentioned the quote in the beginning, very few orthopedic surgeons per 100,000, way below the WHO recommendation. Yeah. And we're supposed to be an emerging middle-income country. Yeah. So the ability to use my skills to make a small difference there, together with all the social things, was a big factor. I have a colleague who was in the same situation, and I knew I worked very well with him. Yeah. And I said, look, if you go, because you need a sounding board, you need someone who you can discuss cases with. I said, if you are going back to Kenya, I'll go back to Kenya with you. And so we had an informal, or maybe it was fairly formal
arrangement. You had a pact. Are you able to mention who you were able to come back with?
Yeah, his name is Mr. Mordecai Atinga. He works with me. He's a very good friend and colleague. Yeah. So, we still
So you guys made this pact. We're coming back.
We made a pact.
Wow. Shout out to Dr. Atinga. If it wasn't for the pact, we would not be having this conversation. So thank you. Yeah. So you guys made this pact and came back. What was that transition like? Because now you've done medicine in the UK. You've done medicine in Canada. What was it like getting into the Kenyan medical system?
The board was fairly efficient in terms of it took a little bit of time to get our registration. Yeah. We're not any longer than we would anticipated.
Yeah.
So that was fine. It helped that we were Kenyan citizens, so that there was no big issue there. The peer review was good. They could see that we were fairly well trained.
Yeah.
And so we started working.
Yeah.
And the work was going well. The usual frustrations, because all the systems we'd worked in were publicly funded systems, at least largely. So moving from a publicly funded system where you're trying to do the best to a private system is, it takes, I think I'm still adjusting to it, because you want to do what's best for the patient.
Yeah.
But sometimes the patient who is paying has ideas about how they want to be treated.
They're the ones who've come with the money. So they're like, no, I don't want to do it this way. Yeah, I Googled and I found
and
that
it says this.
And it says this.
And I'm paying you to do this, so please,
Yes.
Mr. Baraza, comply.
Comply to my plan. And you're like, which is, I think, fodder for a whole other podcast episode.
Yes.
So that transition,
Yes, that was a little bit, or is a little bit tough. Another reason coming back to Kenya was good, as I mentioned, was making a difference. So I mentioned private healthcare. There's some of the challenges, but also just being in Kenya as a taxpayer, living where I live, you're making a bit of an invisible difference, because there's someone who cleans your car, who, washes your house, someone who, does the gardening, you help your folks with this and that. So just being here, you're doing a lot for the small little ecosystem that you inhabit.
Right.
And that's consequential. That means something.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then moving back into the medical sphere,
Yeah.
Some of our charitable initiatives, because we're aware that healthcare is expensive. Anywhere in the world, it is expensive. Somebody has to pay for it.
Right.
And it's the reason why healthcare in Kenya is not where it should be, because I don't think we dedicate enough resources to healthcare. We're busy doing other things with it. Again, fodder for another podcast.
Yes.
Maybe not one medical related or fellowship related.
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot of things with money and not focusing on keeping people alive, keeping people healthy, keeping people well fed, giving people an education and giving them a chance to excel in life. So being here and being an advocate to the government to try and put these things which are I can't think of anything more important than that. Keeping a child alive, nothing more important than that. Keeping a child well fed, giving a child education.
Yeah.
And then after that, the sky's the limit.
Yes.
He can become whatever.
Yeah.
And so pushing those agendas is very important to us. So we're involved in initiatives that are doing that. You will hear more about them.
Yeah. You're not able to talk about them right now.
Oh, I can, but I don't know how much time we have, Jerry. I feel.
Are you able to mention like a couple of the initiatives and just very basically maybe how a doctor who's in training or thinking about training can be able to plug into them?
Yes. So the first thing was that we're seeing many patients who didn't know a lot about their conditions. Yeah. And empowering patients is important to us. We want you to be part of this treatment journey. Yeah. So we developed information portal, EA Ortho, www.ea-ortho.com. Yeah. And it is a repository of information about fairly common orthopedic conditions, complete with treatment plans, embedded YouTube videos, which can start you along the journey of recovery and wellness. So at least you have an idea what's going on with you and what the general path of treatment will be. And it's been very helpful to patients who sometimes are all at sea. Yeah. That the mercy of the doctor in front of them. Yeah. And sometimes...
And they don't have extra information.
Yeah, they don't have extra information. They don't expect. And as we know, the days of the doctor is always right are gone. We're many, many years
Health
past that.
literacy is big now.
It's big. You just have to Google. And Google, very powerful resource, but we think it can be channeled in a good way. And that's what this portal is trying to do. So EA-Ortho. Yeah. That was the first one. And then the mother organization is an institution aimed at improving musculoskeletal healthcare to all and improving access. And it has several arms. There's the teaching and training by doing courses, helping the junior doctors get the necessary skills for them to be able to treat patients. Yeah. Then, of course, there's the research. We have a responsibility towards adding to knowledge. Yeah. So the grant applications we do, the publications we do. Yeah. And then there's, of course, the corporate social responsibility where we reach out to other organizations, Nyumbani and Embrace Cerebral Palsy and sports teams in low-income areas and offer our services.
Yeah.
And then there's the arm of patient empowerment, which is the EA Ortho.
Yeah.
So there are all these initiatives in place to try and grow this mother organization.
Yes.
So you'll be hearing about it.
And is there like a website that people can look at the mother organization versus the EA Ortho?
Yes, it's being developed.
Okay.
We're still toying with the themes and the message because it's quite broad.
Yeah.
So in fact, we just had a meeting a few weeks ago where we're trying to really streamline the message to get as many people on board as possible.
Yeah.
It's going to be called CWO, Clearwater Orthopaedics is the name we settled on.
Yeah.
And there'll be lots more information about it in the coming
weeks.
Yes.
It's just been amazing just hearing about the orthopedic surgery journey that you've had. But there's something that you'd mentioned earlier that I'm just super curious about, which is the ghostwriting.
Yes.
How is this doctor a ghostwriter? Like, how did that come about?
So my creative, though medicine has tried, it has failed to squash my creative juices. I'd always enjoyed writing comprehensions and essays.
Yes.
I never got top marks because I think in the 844 system, you have to fit in a mold.
Yes.
And as my mother will attest to, I was misunderstood.
He was a misunderstood young man.
But I did care because I just loved writing it and I loved writing compositions.
Yeah.
And all throughout, I was always trying to contribute in the university magazines for pieces about international students. I was always contributing something, doing a few creative writing courses. And then I got into, it was actually during COVID when, there was plenty of time to reflect during COVID.
Yeah.
And I used that quote unquote dead time to explore and see, look, what are the things that I've always wanted to do that a bit of extra time, because we always complain we don't have time. And now it's like, well, I have a bit of time now.
Time has come.
And so no more excuses, no more complaining. So
Right.
writing was very big. And there's this, again, another mentor who was a ghostwriter. And he said, look, ghostwriting is amazing because you meet amazing people.
Yeah.
You learn to tell their story. There's no pressure on you because you're not in the limelight. You're not, no bells and whistles.
Yes.
But you're in the background, gently contronging the theme, gently controlling the
You're the wizard
the
behind
narrative.
the curtain.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's once you let go of your ego, it's an extremely powerful position. And you'll find that in the world, most of the powerful people, you don't know. You've never heard of them.
Yeah.
You'll never hear of them.
Because they'll always be behind the scenes
and they love
doing
it.
the thing.
There's none of the pressures of stardom or celebrity and the fictitious accolades that come with it.
Yeah.
It is just, this is what I want and I'm going to direct things the way I want. If somebody else wants to take the plaudits and the credit and wants to cut ribbons and be seen on TV, have it.
Yes.
But, as long as things are following my path, so be it. And so it's extremely, it's humbling, but at the same time powerful.
Wow.
And it just completely resonated with me.
Yeah.
And so dived into it.
Yeah.
And so finding people, creating the stories, crafting articles for them, writing book chapters and eventually books. And it's quite time consuming because sometimes it can encroach onto the clinical work.
Yeah.
Stretching your day from 24 to 36 hours. But it's so worthwhile and enjoyable. It doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear about that. And I like the way you said you have to put your ego aside and just sort of like marinate in that passion of writing. And I'll say something that will probably get me into trouble with many orthopedic surgeons. Just that balance in terms of ego, because we hear that a lot about surgeons. Surgeons, don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Aki, I have so many surgeons who are my friends. So saying that and saying, putting your ego aside, do you find that who you are as an orthopedic surgeon and subspecialist versus the ghostwriter, you sort of have to either wear different masks or sort of like just get into a persona, or this is all still Njalalle?
That's such a good question. And it's a fine balance because on the one hand, you have to portray knowledge, confidence, competence, an air of authority when you're dealing with often anxious patients
Yeah.
and parents, when you're dealing with the children. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
you want them to know, look, I'm not a know-it-all.
Yeah.
There is so much we don't know. And I think having been a trainee and a learner and observed so many wise and experienced clinicians
Yeah.
conduct their business, you learn that old adage of self-congratulatory, chest thumping,
Yes.
it doesn't get you very far. It does not get you very far. And the sooner you can do away with it,
Yeah.
the sooner you can dispense with it, the better doctor
Yeah.
you'll be. Because you think, right, what's the issue here? Are we here when you're with a patient, in front of a patient in a clinic? Am I here to appear good and clever and knowledgeable? Or am I here to help this person?
Yeah.
And sometimes in helping that person, it's admitting I don't know much about this condition.
Yes.
Or my experience in it is limited.
Yeah.
Can you give me a couple of weeks to call some mentors
Yeah,
to
figure
discuss
out
it
a
as a group?
plan.
And which
Yeah.
is why I like where we work, because we work as a team. We have
Yeah.
weekly meetings about complex cases. And many people, I should say, think that patients will react negatively to how can you not know? But it's always positive. It's always like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, yeah. It's like meeting a mechanic who tells you, I can't fix that thing, but I know someone who does, and I'll either get him to
Yeah.
come fix it or I'll speak to him and then we'll talk next week.
Yeah.
You'll never want to let that mechanic go.
Yeah, because he's honest with you
He's
in terms
honest,
of
he's-
Papa.
and it
Yes.
shows that he has your
Yeah.
best interests at heart.
Right.
So same thing with medicine. You confident in what you know, the little you know.
Yeah.
You portray it. Most of the time, you can help people. In a small minority of percentages, you say, "Look, I need to discuss this. I need to talk, and then I might need to refer you to a colleague, or
Yeah.
I'll come back to you with a bit more information, and then we can have a discussion." And it's always well received. So that's the one thing. And then it's off. That seeps everywhere. So even into the writing.
Yeah.
And the music and all that, it just keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
It just keeps you focused on what is important.
Yeah.
And it's a daily struggle because ego is intoxicating. It really is, you know.
Yes.
You always want to think, oh,
This is me.
You're the best.
Yeah. Oh my
you're the
gosh.
best, you're
Yeah.
the best this,
Yeah.
you're the best that.
Yeah.
And so every morning, every experience is it's a battle. And I'm just going to try and do the best I can, focus on the job at hand, treat this patient, write this book, play this piece of music, and try and do it to the best of my ability. I'm not competing with anyone. I'm just trying to do my best and go home.
Just keep swimming.
Yep, in my lane.
In your lane, just keep swimming.
And then I go home. And
you
that's
play
it.
an instrument as well?
Yeah, music
Or
is...
it's vocal?
No. Oh,
Yeah.
No, I think music is essential to life.
Okay.
I don't think there's a culture that doesn't have music, and I think music should be compulsory until such a time as people figure out that it's actually essential for life.
Yes.
I play a bit of piano and I play the violin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Hey, now, do you see why I started by saying you're a Renaissance man? Genuinely. I know you've shown us these threads that sort of like thread through every single thing, and I can see how you play the violin and yet an arthroscopic surgeon as well. But then, do you see why I started by describing you?
I see why. I see why. Just trying
You
to
should
do
see
my
him
best.
just trying to, yeah, which table will I jump under now? Yes. But then
I'm still learning.
You're
in
still
all these
learning
things.
these
Learning writing,
things.
learning orthopedics, learning music.
yeah, but the learning never stops, and I think you've demonstrated it so well that you're a subspecialist. You are actually an expert in your field, and yet you're still open to continually learning, to continually being open to these experiences, which for me, from the perspective of sort of hearing this experience, is extremely humbling to see that this has been your trajectory so far. And I'm just wondering, as we are drawing to a close, what's that word of advice or nugget of wisdom you have for someone who's trying to figure out this fellowship story? Like what piece of advice, what either sagely piece of advice or like mentorship nugget would you give this person who's trying to figure out, okay, I want to do fellowship? Yeah.
I would say with every interaction you have, because this is mainly listened to by medics, so with every interaction you have with a patient, try and learn as much as possible. Learn about the patient. Human beings are infinitely interesting. I've not met a human being who I do not want to know more about.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story. Everyone has something fascinating about them. And that's what makes this profession of ours such a privilege because, many others would kill to meet, 20 new people every week.
Yeah.
And, we see often in a day, they just come in and out of our doors.
Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent on us to harness that, to see opportunities for learning, get to know about other people. They feel valued, they feel respected, they feel happier, part of the therapeutic process.
Yes.
And then think about being the best you can be, because after the arthroscopic thing, as I mentioned, I went back after a couple of years to do pediatric orthopedics, which was, again, another humbling experience because it was a specialty I'd not done much of in my training, but there was a dire need for it.
Yeah.
And so I discussed with a few people I work with, and it was overwhelming. The good thing about hanging out with people who are older than you is that they've seen it before, they've done it before, made more mistakes than you. They have that wisdom. They're elevated from all the fictitious urgencies of life.
Yes.
And so they can tell you, look, yes, you'll be far away, and probably missing home, but it's only for a short period of time. And look at what you'll gain. Look at what you'll gain. Look at how much more accomplished a person you will be after having done it. So there's lots of encouragement to go out, and I'd give the same advice to people looking for fellowships. With every interaction, try and do the best you can. Every day I have a reading list. I don't always read,
but the intention is there in front of you.
I saw these 3 patients. She mentioned some, Klippel Trenoni and Beck with Wiedemann syndrome. Like, oh gosh, I think I remember what those were. I need to go and read up on them. And so every week, at the end of the week, there's like 10 topics that you need to read about. So exert yourself, try and be the best clinician you can be. Yeah. And not just clinician, you have to be organized about how you approach your training, how you approach your seniors, because it's a two-way thing. Seniors will respond well if you approach them well. And it's not just about one. You need dozens of mentors, From one you learn about this thing, one they'll learn about art and music, another financial advice, another general living philosophy. So you should have quite a number of mentors, and they'll just kind of direct your path into where you think you should be going. Fellowships, I think I'd always encourage people to go on fellowships. I keep saying that if I could go on another fellowship, I would, because I look at what I've gained from it. Yes, you lose a bit financially, especially. It's a hit. It's a big hit. But then you think, well, what's life for? Life is all about as many experiences you can, reaching out, meeting people, trying to make a difference. And fellowships offers that in spades. So try and be the best you can be clinically, be organized about how you collate your work, build up the academic side of your portfolio, because that's how you're listed. And then use the knowledge you have, because Kenyan students are among the brightest I've seen in the world.
Hey, say that again. Please, let the record state.
Kenyan medical students, honestly, they are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. Their knowledge work, their the depth of knowledge, how they understand, how they can explain, really good. What lets them down is the organization of the information. So there'll be someone from another part of the world who doesn't know as much as them, but because they're very organized in their thoughts, they have it's like a tree with a Kenyan medical student is like a bush. It's like there's a lot there. But then some of these other people, just from the educational frameworks and how they've been taught.
It's like an IKEA shelf.
Exactly. It's like a tree with branches, and they can hang things. So even though they don't have as many leaves, it just appears more elegant, and they end up getting more opportunities because they've organized the clinical knowledge this way, and they know academia is important. So this, and I've, built a school somewhere in the middle income or low income world, and this. And so they just appear more well-rounded than Kenyan. So I'd say as Kenyan medical students and trainees, we need to organize our entire experience much better, and I think we'll get a lot further, and we'll stand a higher chance of getting accepted into these competitive fellowships.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That wasn't a nugget. That was a whole podcast episode on its own. However, I do appreciate how you've characterized your experience, how you've characterized what you've seen of Kenyan students as well going out. And I so appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this journey that has been your medical education journey, as well as the other fun stuff that you do. And I am hoping the listeners you'll be able to interact more with this information. Ask the questions, please. Ask us, give us feedback. Let us know what you thought about Njalale's life, Njalale's medical education experience. And at least I'll put some form of communication, maybe an email or a social media handle that you can be able to reach him directly. Plus also some of the wonderful work that he's been doing and be able to put in the links for that as well. This has been one of those really enriching experiences just to be able to hear. And I thank you so much, Njalalle, for taking the time on Fellowship Safaris podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, Stone Jerry, thanks for the opportunity. And I'm sure we'll be in touch over the coming months.
Oh, yeah, very, very soon. Very, very soon. So until next time, guys, bye. I'm so glad you stayed tuned. Please get the word out and share it with at least 3 people. Make this episode like a chain letter. Share it, share it, share it. Come back for the next leg of our safari where we'll be talking about...
I think it's really important, one, to go for fellowship training, but your reasons have to be very clear in your mind as to why you want to go and get trained. Is it just so that you can get a job, or is it something that you want to make an impact about?
Listeners are advised to use their own judgment and discretion when applying any information discussed in this and all podcast episodes to their specific situation. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional if you have any concerns or questions regarding a particular subject matter. You can find this and other episodes of this podcast on our website at www.fellowshipsafaris.org. You can also find all our episodes on all podcast platforms. Reach out to us on social media as Fellowship Safaris on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and our Twitter handle is @fellowshipsafar. You could also send us an email on fellowshipsafaris@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you and interacting with what you have to say about the Fellowship Safaris podcast. It takes a village to make this podcast. The executive producer and original music is done by Mokavi Maweu. The sound engineer is Tevin Sudi with thanks to AQ Studios. Graphic design was done by Benjamin Mboya. We would like to give a special shout out to Josephine Karianjahe and Melissa Mbogwa of Africa Podfest. All rights reserved by Dr. Jerry Karianjahe and the Fellowship Safaris podcast.